Welcome to this series about capacity and capability building to craft and shape operations, enabling adoption and adaption. As we go through this journey, we take a more in-depth look at selected aspects with a focus on business issues around technological transformation. With these being more in-depth on heavier materials, please feel free to review the takeout points if in a rush, but also take your time to go through, pause, and get the real benefits. We hope the skills and expertise shared is of value to you and those you support in this changing world. Please subscribe, add your comments, and share with others. This week, we look at crisis management within artificial intelligence in general by considering that the proven pragmatics are used to manage a crisis induced directly or indirectly by the use of AI and automated knowledge worker services. The role of AI within crisis management, the remediation of operations around the use of AI, proven business pragmatics, and core of crisis plans are still needed. Capacity and capability to adopt and adapt to circumstances required, but various responses differ. The plan depends on the capacity and capability built, AI within event analysis and scenario modeling, and remediation using AI. Thank you for staying. A key message this week is the application of proven pragmatics to managing a crisis within artificial intelligence and automated knowledge worker services. While a given crisis may vary as a result of the use of AI and automated knowledge worker services, the common triggers, the proven business pragmatics, the required capacities and capabilities, the need for remediation are all still required, which means that the basics of crisis management still apply within the world of AI. For a few minutes, we will talk about aspects of crisis management plans. Those familiar with crisis plans may feel the desire to fast forward to the next section, but we encourage the refresher. A crisis plan is about the preparation, including the skilling, ability to do, and training, the how to do, with regular scenario sessions and exercises. The plan is about having people figure out issues and how to respond, as well as making the preparations. The plan is there to enable the alignment of activities and dependencies. A good crisis plan has contributed to the risk management and mitigation, but the plan is there for when a crisis occurs. Parts of the plan are there for reference in a crisis, with leadership familiar with the contents of the plan. The need for this does not change because of AI. Rather, AI strengthens the need for it. About plans. The plan needs to carry the details about the plan, mainly for reference, including document metadata such as revision dates and other changes, history, owner of the plan, who owns the plan and is responsible for the plan, testing of the plan, what is the testing regime of the plan, and whether the testing has been done, review of the plan, the regime for reviewing the plan, dependencies, having the dependencies for the plan identified. Summary. This section summarizes the plan. This is mainly for reference, including purpose, scope, the cycle for crisis management, the level at which the plan operates, links to other plans like DR, BCP, evacuation, or other business area plans, which needs to be kept current, and a list of contacts with name, title, role in the crisis, organization, email, phone, with alternatives which needs to be kept current. Plan. This is the section covering the management of the crisis and should already be familiar to those involved, and includes crisis team members, including responsibilities with alternates, the crisis team chairman with alternates, roles and responsibilities covering key people, teams, who they report to and levels of delegation, specialist teams covering the composition, roles and responsibilities and reporting to, business as usual teams covering composition, roles and responsibilities and reporting to, reporting with who reports what and when to whom, and decisions, who can make what decisions for what areas, and the escalation points. Activation of the plan, how the plan is activated, including activation criteria for the plan, who is responsible for activation of the plan, including the crisis teams, and default activation of teams, whether BAU or specialist, based on different types of crisis and scenarios. Crisis assessment, based on scenarios, summary actions required for assessing a crisis for action are presented. These need not be detailed or necessarily sequential, but serve as a guide, including scenario-based assessment guidelines, scenario-based escalation points, scenario-based actions. The actual crisis management. Based on scenarios, the summary actions required for managing a crisis are noted. These need not be detailed and are not necessarily sequential, but serve as a guide, including scenario-based management guidelines, scenario-based escalation points, scenario-based actions. Crisis remediation. Based on scenarios and the events occurring, the summary actions required for remediation are noted. These need not be detailed and are not necessarily sequential, but serve as a guide, including details worked out in the crisis, scenario-based restoration guidelines, scenario-based escalation points, scenario-based actions. Post-event review. Guidelines for the after-action report or post-event review, covering what was good, what to do better, remediations, owners, deliverables with dates. Communication. The reporting is within the crisis. This is a section within the plan and addresses the stakeholders, outside of those managing the crisis, who engages and how with the required processes and escalations. Stakeholders include staff, customers, suppliers, regulators, government, internal management, media, emergency services. From the previous conversation on a crisis management plan, various aspects stand out, including that solving a crisis within AI, like any other crisis, is the emergent behaviour from all of the respective areas of business, which resolves the crisis, and that the same pragmatics are needed to address a crisis rather than some AI special process. These pragmatics include people. It is the people who will solve the crisis and not the AI, though AI may be used in exercises and scenarios. Need to have done the exercises and scenarios to capacity and capability build, to adopt and adapt. Skilling, ability to do, and training, how to do. Covering sustaining business whilst AI and automated knowledge worker operations are addressed. Using AI and knowledge worker services to remediate and manage a crisis. Intercede, the ability to intercede into AI and automated processes to manage them through recovery and to prevent the AI from learning to make the same mistakes. Technology. Assurance and recovery of technology is often part of the crisis management, but with different approaches needed for AI and automated services. Assurance from vendors, continuity of sources and feeds, remediation and restoration of the technology which may require revised processes. Data. Recovery of data to manage ongoing service delivery is required with all of the nuances and complexities is an aspect of crisis management. Recovery of information sources to the right sequencing with the respective remediation. Recalibration so that the same learning does not include the same mistakes, i.e. the importance of benchmark testing. Remediation and restoration of the data, which may require AI processes to achieve. Processes. Having the processes to manage the business and the crisis. It is the scaling up and reprioritizing of BAU functions which manages a crisis. The business has to continue while the crisis is addressed. The processes manage the remediation and restoration. What this conversation shows is the need for proven pragmatics to address an AI-related crisis. Crisis often comes from a series of incremental events which leads to the overall event. Similarly, managing a crisis comes from a series of actions forming an behaviour which brings the required outcomes. Not only is an emergent behaviour integral to the design, development, implementation, operation, and assurance and consumption of AI, but emergent behaviour is part of the crisis management of AI. AI is the cause of a crisis. Loss of AI, errors or failures in AI, either in a business and or related operations, can cause a crisis, from large-scale failures in logistics and error propagation causing system outages. AI can be the cause of a crisis. Managing the failure of AI at another party and working through the resulting error propagation requires an all-of-business response. What AI does is change the risk profile of the crisis. AI impacted by a crisis. A crisis can impact AI-related operations, causing a range of business impacts, particularly disruption to service and error propagation with data and transactions requiring remediation. that vendor dependency can impact the response in a crisis. AI scenarios. Whether it is scenarios for preparation, risk management, response, or in remediation, AI creates specific scenarios for crisis management as well as being of use in managing a crisis. Specific impacts of a machine-to-machine interaction are part of the scenarios and how such crises can be managed. AI in modeling. Related to the scenarios is the modeling for forecasting purposes, part of a risk-based approach, and impacting decision-making in a crisis response or remediation. AI in response. In the response to a crisis, AI can be included to help with risk management, logistics management, and to assist in the fast tracking of process. The addition of new AI functionality within a crisis may occur within an acceptable risk profile. AI in remediation. Like AI in the response to a crisis, AI can play its part in the remediation, including the using of AI in decision making for priorities for remediation, AI in data analysis for future preparations and scenarios, as well as AI within remediated processes. These are just selected examples of AI within crisis management. The recurring themes are that, first, while specific processes are needed for the AI and automation, like other specific functions in a crisis, the overall core capacity and capability of adoption and adaption are required. Second, it is the emergent behaviors which are needed for managing AI within a crisis. Third, an AI-based crisis has all of the nuances of financial management, customer management, market response, communications, and more. Like any other crisis, the proven business pragmatics are required for your AI crisis. Crisis management within AI has been used to illustrate some key aspects. The same proven pragmatics apply to an AI-related crisis as for any other crisis. While the specific AI response varies, as it does for any other crisis type, solving the crisis is just business as usual activities scaled and reprioritized like it is for any other crisis. A crisis is solved through an emergent behavior, and so it is for AI. Crisis management shows the importance of a risk-based approach to emergent behaviors within AI, within the operations and services of the AI, and within the business. Thank you for your time. May the skills and expertise shared be of value to you and those you support in this changing world. Please subscribe, add your comments, and share with others.